spokesman for the ISAF forces in Afghanistan, and he joins me now from Kabul. Carsten, good to speak with you. Let me lay a little foundation here and get some information at the same time. What is meant by the phrasing here, the improper disposal of the Quran and other Islamic religious materials? What happened here specifically?
Well, good evening, Tony. What actually happened was that in the course of last night, a considerable amount of religious material, including Qurans, was set for disposal by ISAF personnel and brought to the facility in the detention facility in Parwan. Fortunately for all of us, local workers recognized the type of material that we are talking about and intervened. So actually the disposal process was stopped in time, but it led to protests over the day.
All right, let's be very clear. Were Qurans burned?
Well, as far as we know, and the investigation is ongoing in close cooperation with the Ministry of the Interior, as far as we are aware, they were not burned, but we have to wait for the result of the investigation. What was the material in question? What were the amounts of material in questions? Were Qurans involved? And also, what was the chain of orders that led to this incident?
Carsten, isn't that a pretty simple thing to determine? Laborers find the material, you question the laborers, and you ask the laborers whether or not Qurans were burned. That's not difficult to ascertain, is it?
Well, we haven't got any proof yet that material was actually burned. So therefore, what we wanted to make sure was that with Islamic authorities present, first of all, the material was secured. We then wanted to have the participation of the Ministry of the Interior, and we are now looking into what was actually done before we come out with any further statement, because we want to know is what was the way of decision, how was this material then brought to the facility. We were, insofar, lucky that local workers actually interfered. It was a terrible mistake, and that is why General Allen very quickly this morning came out with an apology to the president, the government, and of course to the people of Afghanistan.
That's right. I'm going to get to General Allen's statement in just a moment, but I want to hear something from you. What message do you want to send to, say, the 800 or 1,000 or so protesters who were shouting, "Die foreigners," outside the Bagram airbase, and to Muslims around the world who will be offended by this?
The message was sent very quickly. The message that was basically sent is this was a mistake. This was a mistake in procedure. This was a mistake that could have led to the mistreatment of religious material and the destruction. It was the local workers who stopped the process. We have to find out what was the mistake, how did it happen, to make absolutely sure that it doesn't happen again. It was a mistake and led to an apology. And at the end of this day, having seen demonstrations in Bagram, having seen smaller demonstrations in Kabul, we also obviously are happy that the people took restraint, that this demonstration was controlled and in large amounts not violent.
All right, Carsten, one last question for you. The general also said in a statement, "I assure you, I promise you, this was not intentional in any way." How can such a statement be made ahead of the findings of the investigation?
Well, you can imagine that this morning when the news broke and we heard what has happened in Parwan, and that fortunately this process was stopped, that we immediately not only took action but looked at it and said what steps can be done to stop this. This is basically a mistake, a misjudgment on somebody's part, and we have to find out in the chain how did this misjudgment came to being and what steps can be taken to absolutely make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
All right. Carsten Jacobson is the spokesman for the ISAF forces in Afghanistan, joining us from Kabul. Good to talk to you, sir. Thank you.